The vast chamber of the Galactic Concordance hummed with the low thrum of holographic displays, their azure lights casting elongated shadows across the tiered seats. Ambassador Elara Voss stood at the central podium, her human frame unassuming amid the towering forms of the alien delegates. At 42, she carried the weight of her species' first real diplomatic foray with quiet resolve, her dark hair pulled into a practical braid, her uniform crisp but unmarked by the ostentatious ranks favored by the others. Flanking her were two aides, Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual squint from years tinkering in low-grav labs, and Mira, the sharp-tongued xenolinguist whose quick wit had already diffused one tense negotiation. The council's high seat loomed above them all, occupied by the Zorathian elder, Kreller, his scaled hide rippling like molten silver under the lights. His race dominated the Concordance, their fleets unmatched, their edicts law. Humanity petitions for observer status, Kreller intoned, his voice a resonant boom that vibrated the air. Yet your worlds teeter on the edge of the void storms. What value do you offer that does not burden our resources? Elara met his gaze steadily, her hands clasped behind her back to hide the faint tremor of adrenaline. She'd prepared for this, months of simulations back on the colony ship Endeavor. We offer knowledge of the storms themselves, honored elder. Our probes have mapped fluctuations no Zorathian vessel could withstand. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The neighboring delegate, a feathered avian from the Lyrax collective, tilted its head, eyes gleaming with skepticism. Jax shifted beside her, his fingers twitching as if longing for a toolkit. He whispered under his breath, "They think we're primitives. Show 'em the data packet." But Kreller raised a clawed hand, silencing the chamber. "Knowledge unproven is wind. Demonstrate or depart." The words hung heavy, a test laced with dismissal. Elara nodded once, signaling Jax. He patched into the podium's interface with a portable drive, its screen flickering to life with swirling storm models, human ingenuity distilled into predictive algorithms born from desperate survival. As the holograph expanded, filling the space with simulated tempests of plasma and gravity shears, Elara felt the first crack in the council's facade. Kreller's scales flattened slightly, a Zorathian tell of unease. The stakes were clear. Acceptance meant alliance, rejection isolation. And in the void's shadow, isolation was a death sentence. The council chamber hummed with the low thrum of alien voices, a symphony of clicks and warbles that echoed off the vaulted ceilings of crystal spires. Ambassador Elara Voss sat at the human delegation's curved table, her fingers tracing the edge of a datapad that displayed the latest negotiation logs. Across the vast room, the representatives of the Galactic Concordance shifted in their ornate seats, towering insectoids from Zorith, fluid shapeshifters from the Nebula clans, and the stern, avian elders of the Crevan hierarchy. They had gathered to debate the allocation of warplane access, a resource as vital as breath in the void of space. Elara's colleague, Dr. Marcus Hale, leaned toward her, his voice a whisper amid the din. "They're stalling again. The Crevans want to lock us out of the outer rim routes." Elara nodded, her dark eyes scanning the holographic display flickering above the central podium. The Concordance's pride was legendary. They viewed humanity as upstarts, barely a century into stellar expansion, unworthy of equal footing. But Earth's envoys had come prepared, backed by innovations in quantum shielding that could revolutionize their shared defenses against the encroaching void storms. She straightened as the presiding elder, a Crevan named Thaler with feathers like sharpened obsidian, wrapped his taloned perch. "The human proposal is ambitious," Thaler intoned, his beak curving in what passed for a skeptical smile among his kind. "Yet ambition without proof is mere noise." Marcus stifled a snort, but Elara placed a hand on his arm, her expression calm, almost serene. She had learned early in her diplomatic career that humans thrived not on bluster, but on quiet persistence. Rising smoothly, she activated her datapad, projecting a simulation of the Void Storm's latest incursion, a swirling maelstrom of dark energy devouring a fringe colony. "Elder Thaler, our shields aren't ambition, they're necessity. Watch." The hologram shifted, showing a human-engineered barrier holding firm where Concordance tech faltered, the storm's tendrils recoiling like flames from water. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, a mix of intrigue and dismissal. The Zorith delegate, a chitinous figure named Crix, scuttled forward on multiple legs, his mandibles clicking. Impressive visuals, Ambassador. But can your necessity withstand the real fury? We've lost fleets to lesser gales. Elara met his compound eyes without flinching. We've lost outpost 2, delegate. But we adapt. Let us demonstrate on the edge of the storm, jointly if the Concordance agrees. Thaler's feathers bristled, a sign of agitation Elara had studied in the pre-mission briefs. The Crevens prided themselves on their ancient wisdom, their fleets the backbone of the Concordance's patrols. To suggest human tech might eclipse theirs was an insult wrapped in courtesy. He conferred briefly with his aides, the air thick with unspoken hierarchies. Marcus whispered again, tension coiling in his voice. They're going to counter with their own test. If we back down, we're sidelined for decades. Elara's mind raced, calculating risks. The void storms weren't just a hazard. They were a creeping threat, eroding trade lanes and stranding ships in null space. Humanity's isolation on the galactic fringe made every route precious. Lose them and Earth's growth stalled. She spoke before Thaler could respond, her tone steady. A joint demonstration ensures fairness. Our engineers can integrate with yours. No one claims sole glory. The chamber fell silent, save for the faint hum of translators. Crix's mandibles paused mid-click, and even the shapeshifters rippled in curiosity. Thaler tilted his head, appraising her. For a moment, the weight of centuries-old alliances hung in the balance, the human's soft words cutting through the pride like a scalpel. But as he opened his beak to reply, a distant alarm pierced the air, a priority signal from the outer patrols. The void storm had surged earlier than predicted, swallowing a Concordance scout vessel whole. Elara exchanged a glance with Marcus, her pulse quickening. The test they proposed was no longer hypothetical. It was here, demanding action amid the shattering of protocols. Thaler's eyes narrowed. Very well, Ambassador. Your words may speak softly, but the storm roars. Prepare your shields, we deploy at once. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, her knuckles whitening as the vessel shuddered through the nebulous turbulent edge. The view screen flickered with violet swirls, like ink bleeding into water, and she could feel the hum of the engine straining against the cosmic winds. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren adjusted his glasses, his fingers flying over a data pad, cross-referencing the Council's latest transmission. They're stalling, he muttered, his voice steady but edged with frustration. The Krell delegation is demanding another demonstration of our primitive, warp tech before they even consider the Alliance proposal. Across from them, Lieutenant Mira Torres leaned back, her boots propped on the console, a wry smile cracking her fatigue-lined face. Primitive? That's rich coming from a species that still uses bioluminescent signaling for diplomacy. She twirled a stylus between her fingers, the only sign of her restless energy. Elara shot her a glance, keep it light, Mira, but the lieutenant just shrugged. They'd been at this for weeks, shuttling between the Council's orbiting station and the neutral zones, each negotiation a grind against the aliens' smug superiority. The shuttle lurched again and Elara's stomach flipped. Status, pilot? She called to the front. Ensign Patel's voice crackled over the intercom. Nebula interference, mum. But I've got a fix, rerouting power to stabilizers. A moment later, the ride smoothed, the colors outside shifting to a deeper indigo. Kai looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. This delay isn't just about tech. The Council's pride is on the line. If they accept our help against the Void Swarm without proving we're inferior, it shatters their narrative. He tapped the pad, pulling up schematics of the Swarm's hive ships, massive organic behemoths that devoured stellar resources like locusts. Elara nodded, rubbing her temple. The Swarm had already stripped 3 outer colonies, and the Council's vaunted energy shields were failing against the creature's adaptive acid barrages. Humanity's offer, modular drone swarms with adaptive AI, had seemed a lifeline, but the aliens balked, insisting on tests that bordered on sabotage. Last cycle, a Krell probe had accidentally overloaded their demo rig, nearly costing Mira her arm. They're testing us, Mira said, dropping her feet to the floor with a thud. Not the tech, the people. See if we'll break or beg. Elara's jaw tightened. She wouldn't beg. Not after the Council's ambassador had sneered at their barbaric ingenuity during the opening talks. Then we adapt. Kai, refine the drone protocols for their acid resistance. Mira, prep the secondary payload, non-lethal EMP bursts if they pull another stunt. The shuttle emerged from the nebula, the Council station looming ahead like a crystalline fortress, its spires glinting under artificial suns. Docking clamps engaged with a resonant clang, and as the hatch hissed open, Elara straightened her uniform, the weight of the Alliance, and humanity's unyielding grit, settling on her shoulders like an old friend. They stepped into the antechamber where a holographic envoy awaited, its form a shimmering cascade of lights. Ambassador Voss, it intoned, voice like wind through reeds. The Council convenes in one cycle. Prepare your demonstration. Kai exchanged a glance with Elara, his caution mirroring her resolve. Mira cracked her knuckles, whispering, "Let's show them soft words with a steel spine." As they moved toward the prep bays, alarms blared faintly from the station's core, another swarm incursion probe testing the shields. Time was fracturing, and so was the Council's illusion of control. Elara's mind raced, piecing together a contingency. If words failed, actions would echo loudest. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they hurtled toward the Orion drift. The stars outside blurred into streaks, but her focus stayed sharp on the holographic display flickering before her. Ambassador Hale's voice crackled over the comms from the lead vessel. "Elara, we've got incoming signatures, 3 Krell interceptors. They're not hailing. Looks like the Council's pets are off the leash." She nodded, even though he couldn't see it, her fingers dancing across the controls to sync their formation. Hale was the talker, the one who could weave words into shields, but out here in the void between systems, it was her grit that kept them breathing. Beside her, Lieutenant Rao hunched over his station, his dark eyes narrowed behind the glow of tactical readouts. Cautious as ever, he muttered, "We reroute through the nebula? By time for the diplomatic channel to open." "Too slow," Elara replied, her voice steady, laced with that human edge of defiance. The Krell ships loomed larger now, their angular hulls glinting like obsidian blades under the distant sun. She'd faced worse in the Belt Wars, asteroids that cracked hulls like eggs, but this felt different. Personal. The Council had dismissed humanity's claim to the drift's rare isotopes, calling it primitive overreach. Now, with their mining ops sabotaged, Hale's soft words in the chambers hadn't stopped the enforcers from coming. The first warning shot lanced past, a plasma streak that lit the cockpit in crimson. Alarms wailed. Rao's hands flew, deploying countermeasures, flares blooming like false suns to scatter the enemy's sensors. Elara banked hard, the shuttle groaning under the strain, G-forces pinning her to the seat. "Hale, we're pinned. Your silver tongue better work fast." From the comms, Hale's response came calm, almost wry. "Working on it. Keep them dancing, Captain." Rao, plot an evasion vector. Use the debris field from that old freighter wreck. Rao complied, but his brow furrowed. "It's tight. One wrong turn and we're scrap." The debris field appeared on the display, a graveyard of twisted metal tumbling lazily in the vacuum. Elara's mind raced, calculating angles she'd learned in sims back on Mars, where failure meant a slow death in the red dust. She punched the thrusters, weaving through the first chunks, rusted hull plates the size of shuttles. A Krell interceptor closed in, its cannons charging with a telltale whine over the scanners. Elara's plan formed in an instant, not evasion but confrontation. Rao locked disruptors on their lead ship's nacelle. Low yield, just enough to rattle. "But Captain," Rao started, hesitation cracking his voice. "Do it." She didn't wait for agreement. Trust was earned in action, not debate. The shot fired, a precise pulse that skimmed the enemy's engine, sparking a cascade of malfunctions. The interceptor veered wildly, buying them seconds. Hale's shuttle pulled ahead, broadcasting on open channels. "Krell Command, this is Ambassador Hale of United Earth. Stand down. The Council will hear of this aggression. Your pride won't shield you from the fallout." Static answered, then a guttural translation, "Human vermin. The drift is ours by decree. Yield or perish. Elara smirked, dodging another barrage. The words stung, echoing the Council's earlier sneers, humans as upstarts, not equals. But she felt the shift in Rao's posture beside her. His fingers steadier now, syncing with her rhythm. They threaded the debris field, using the wreckage as improvised cover, luring the Krell into a tightening noose of their own making. Then it backfired. One interceptor anticipated the turn, its beams slicing through a drifting girder. The fragment exploded into shrapnel, peppering Elara's shuttle. Alarms screamed, hull breach in engineering. Rao cursed, sealing bulkheads as smoke curled from vents. We're losing power. Auxiliary only. Elara's heart pounded, but her hands didn't falter. Patch me through to Hale. Tell him we've got maybe 10 minutes before we're sitting ducks. The stakes pressed in, the cold void outside a reminder of how fragile their ingenuity could be. Yet, in that moment, with Rao's quick fixes and Hale's voice rallying over the line, she sensed the spark of something unbreakable, humanity's quiet resolve, speaking not in thunder but in the choices that kept them alive. The Krell closed again, but Elara angled for one last gambit, eyes locked on a massive, unstable wreck ahead. Captain Elara Voss gripped the console edge as the shuttle lurched through the nebulous swirling gases. The violet haze outside pressed against the viewport like a living shroud, distorting the stars into mocking smears. Her team, Dr. Kai Ren, the engineer with his perpetual squint of calculation, and Lieutenant Mirasol, whose steady hands belied her sharp tongue, huddled in the cramped cabin, faces lit by the flickering diagnostics. Shields holding at 60%, Kai muttered, fingers dancing over his tablet. But if we push deeper, that ion storm will fry us like yesterday's ration packs. Elara nodded, her jaw set. The Council's directive had been clear. Retrieve the lost probe from the nebula's heart, the one carrying data on the ancient artifact that could shift the balance of power among the stars. The Krell Dominion had already claimed it in their broadcasts, their pride swelling like the gas clouds around them. Humanity's voice, soft but insistent, had earned this mission. Now failure meant ceding ground to those tentacled bureaucrats. Mira leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at the sensor read. Incoming signature. Not ours. Looks like a Krell scout vessel, cloaked until now. The shuttle shuddered as proximity alarms blared. Elara's mind raced. The initial plan to slip in quietly had relied on the nebula's interference masking their approach. But the Krell, ever arrogant, must have anticipated human meddling. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered, voice calm steel. Kai, reroute power to thrusters. Mira, arm the countermeasures. The ship twisted, engines whining in protest. A burst of plasma fire grazed their hull, sending sparks across the deck. Elara felt the heat bloom in her cheeks, the acrid smell of singed circuits filling the air. They dove deeper, the nebulous tendrils coiling tighter, but the Krell ship matched their pace, its sleek form cutting through the haze like a predator's fin. They're hailing us, Mira said, surprise etching her features. Elara hesitated. Protocol demanded response, but trust was a luxury here. On screen. The view screen crackled to life, revealing Commander Thalvek, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with smug assurance. Tentacles framed his console, each tipped with glowing sensors. Humans, he intoned, voice a resonant hum translated imperfectly into basic. This nebula is Krell territory. Your probe is forfeit. Turn back or we will ensure you do not leave. Elara met his gaze, her wit sharpening like a blade. Territory? Last I checked, the Council Charter leaves uncharted space open to all. We're just collecting what's ours, unless you'd like to explain to the Assembly why you're poaching data on a shared threat. Thalvek's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Shared? Your kind speaks softly but actions betray you. We claim the artifact's secrets for the Dominion's glory. The transmission cut as another volley rocked the shuttle. Alarms wailed, a hull breach warning flashed red. Kai cursed, sealing a panel that hissed steam. Port side compromised. We're venting atmosphere, life support dropping. Elara's plan to negotiate had backfired spectacularly. The Krell saw it as weakness, pressing their advantage. The probe's signal pulsed faintly ahead, tantalizingly close, but now the stakes twisted higher. If they retreated, humanity's fragile standing in the council crumbled. If they fought, the nebulous hazards would claim them before the Krell did. Adapt, Elara said more to herself than the team. She pulled up the schematics, eyes scanning for an edge. The nebula's magnetic fields could disrupt Krell shields if harnessed right, human ingenuity against alien pride. Kai, can we modulate the engines to generate a feedback pulse? Draw them into the dense core. He blinked, then grinned faintly. Risky. Could overload our own systems. But yeah, give me 2 minutes. Mira prepped the decoys, her movements precise. If this works, they'll think twice about underestimating us soft speakers. The shuttle banked hard, baiting the pursuer deeper. Elara watched the Krell ship close in, its weapons charging. Tension coiled in her gut, the hum of the engines a heartbeat in the void. One wrong pulse and they'd be adrift, ghosts in the gas. But surrender wasn't in the human lexicon. Not today. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant warning. The viewport ahead framed the jagged silhouette of Zorth Prime's rings, a glittering debris field that had claimed more ships than she cared to count. Her crew, 3 souls she'd handpicked for their unflinching resolve, huddled around the tactical holo-display, faces lit in the cold blue glow. Scans confirm it, murmured Jax, her wiry engineer, fingers dancing over the console. His voice carried that cautious edge, always measuring risks like a merchant weighing coins. The Council's blockade is tighter than a Krellian vice. Drones everywhere, and those plasma nets are live. One wrong vector and we're vapor. Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant pushing through when the stars themselves seemed aligned against you. Humanity's envoy to the Galactic Council had been dismissed as a curiosity, a soft-spoken species from the outer rims, more poet than warrior. But the resource shortage back home, the fading colonies starving for dilithium, wasn't a debate topic. It was a fight. And the Council's pride had blinded them to the quiet fury building in human hearts. We adapt, she said, her tone steady as the shuttle's inertial dampeners. Lena, plot the evasion route through the outer ringlets. Use the debris for cover. Jax, prep the EMP burst, low yield, just enough to scramble their sensors without alerting the heavies. Lena, the navigator with a wit sharp as her orbital insertions, flashed a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Aye, Captain. Dancing through that mess is like threading a needle in a hurricane. But if anyone can, it's us monkeys from Sol. The shuttle lurched as they dipped into the rings, particles pinging off the hull like angry hail. Elara felt the tension coil in her gut, watching the holo-display flicker with incoming signatures. The plan was simple. Slip past the blockade, dock with the neutral station on the far side, and deliver the proposal. Not with weapons, but with data, proof of human tech that could revolutionize their warp drives in exchange for the dilithium haul. Speak softly indeed. But the Council had laughed off the initial hails, their ambassadors sneering about primitive upstarts. A sharp alarm blared. Drones on our tail? Jax shouted, his caution fracturing into urgency. The holo-display bloomed with red icons closing fast. Elara's hands flew to the controls. Evasive. Lena, now. The shuttle banked hard, engines whining as they wove through a cluster of ice boulders. One drone clipped a fragment, exploding in a silent bloom of fire that lit the rings like a fleeting aurora. But the others adapted, their formation tightening, plasma nets unfurling like predatory webs. Impy ready? Jax called, sweat beading on his brow. Firing in 3, 2. The burst rippled out, an invisible wave that should have fried their pursuit. But the display showed the drones faltering only for a heartbeat before resuming course. Upgraded shields? The Council's tech teams must have anticipated interference. Damn it, Elara muttered, her mind racing. The early plan, relying on the EMP as a surefire blind, backfired spectacularly. Stakes climbed, one net grazed and the shuttle systems would fry, leaving them adrift in the void, easy pickings for salvage crews. Lena's voice cut through, laced with that defiant spark. Captain, reroute power to the auxiliary thrusters. We slingshot off that big fragment ahead, use its gravity to loop back and ram the lead drone. It'll chain react the net. Risky. Reckless even. But Ilara saw the angle in the scan, a massive ice chunk tumbling lazily, its mass enough to whip them around like a comet's tail. Do it. Jax reinforced the forward shields. All hands brace. The maneuver hit like a gut punch. The shuttle hurtled toward the fragment, proximity alarms screaming. At the last second, Lena fired the thrusters, slinging them into a tight arc. G-forces pinned Ilara to her seat, the world blurring into streaks of ice and starlight. They emerged on the drone's flank, accelerating straight for the leader. Impact shuddered through the hull, metal screeching as the drone crumpled. The plasma net destabilized, arcs of energy lashing out and ensnaring its fellows in a cascading failure. Explosions dotted the rings, debris blooming like metallic flowers. Silence fell, broken only by the crew's ragged breaths. The path ahead cleared, if only temporarily. Ilara exhaled, glancing at her team. Jax wiped his face, a rare smile cracking his reserve. Lena hooped softly, punching the air. But as the station's lights winked into view, a new signal pinged, Council interceptors heavier class, vectoring in from the core. The evasion bought time, not victory. And the dilithium waited, a prize that could save worlds or doom them if Pride won the day. Ilara leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Humanity's voice might be soft, but its resolve? Unbreakable. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmissions. The council chamber's air hummed with the low thrum of alien tech, but her focus narrowed to the single red alert pulsing on the screen. "They're accelerating the vote," she muttered, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Raj leaned over her shoulder, his fingers dancing across the auxiliary panel, pulling up encrypted logs from the human delegation's shuttle. "By 2 cycles, he confirmed, his usual wit sharpened by urgency. "The Krell ambassador must have pulled strings. If we don't counter this, our proposal for joint resource mapping gets buried under their blockade initiative." He glanced at her, eyes reflecting the glow of the hollow. "We prepped for debate, not a sprint." Across the chamber, Ambassador Lyra of the Verdani floated in her nutrient mist, her tendrils twitching with agitation. She had been their quiet ally, swayed by Elena's stories of human adaptability during the initial negotiations. Now her bioluminescent skin dimmed as she relayed a private channel. "The Council's pride blinds them. The Krell claim your species lacks the evolutionary maturity for expansion. They cite the asteroid incident as proof, your mining op that recklessly disrupted a migration path." Elena pushed back from the console, standing tall amid the swirl of alien forms. The asteroid mishap had been a calculated risk, a human ingenuity play to harvest rare isotopes without invasive tech, but the Krell spun it as barbarism. "Maturity," she echoed softly, the word tasting like ash. "We've spoken softly, shown them our hands open for partnership. Time to remind them what those hands can do." Raj nodded, already interfacing with the shuttle's AI. "I've got a workaround. Reroute the sensor data from our deep space probes, filter it through the Verdani relays to mask the origin. It'll look like neutral observatory input, not human advocacy." His plan was clever, born of late-night simulations back on the colony ship, but Elena saw the flaw. The Krell's surveillance net was tightening. And one glitch could expose them, branding humanity as deceivers before they even had a seat. Lyra's tendrils extended toward them, forming a subtle barrier against prying eyes. "Risky," she pulsed in their shared calm. "My people owe you for the water purification tech you shared last cycle. But if this backfires, the Council could expel your delegation entirely." The chamber's central dais lit up as the Krell ambassador, a hulking figure of iridescent scales, boomed his opening statement. His voice echoed like grinding stone. "Humanity's whispers are but echoes of chaos. We propose isolation until they prove stewardship." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, a tide of scaled, feathered, and gaseous forms shifting in unease. Elena's mind raced. The early plan, presenting the resource map as a gift to foster unity, had faltered when the Krell preempted with their own skewed narrative. Now, with the vote looming, adaptation meant gambling everything. She keyed the transmit, her finger hovering. "Do it, Raj." Softly but with teeth. As the data stream began its covert flow, A subtle vibration shook the chamber floor. Alarms blared from the Krell's side. Their net had snagged the anomaly. Elena's heart pounded, the air thickening with accusation. Lyra's mist swirled protectively, but the ambassador's gaze locked on them, scales bristling. The plan was unraveling faster than a frayed tether in vacuum, and the cost loomed, not just rejection but a fracture in the fragile trust they'd built. Raj cursed under his breath, rerouting on the fly, but the damage rippled outward. Whispers turned to demands for transparency, the council's unity cracking under the strain. Elena met Lyra's fading glow, a silent vow passing between them. They weren't out yet, but the stakes had sharpened. Humanity's voice, once soft, now teetered on the edge of a roar that could shatter alliances or forge them anew. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as they skimmed the asteroid's craggy surface. The mineral-rich rock loomed outside the viewport, a jagged behemoth scarred by millennia of cosmic impacts, its surface glinting with veins of iridium that the council coveted like forbidden treasure. Beside her, Dr. Liam Hargrove hunched over his console, his fingers flying across holographic displays, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "They're closing in," Liam muttered, his voice tight. The scanner pinged relentlessly, 3 council interceptors, sleek and predatory, vectoring from the system's outer edge. Their pilots, those smug avian species from the perch worlds, had probably already broadcasted their demands. Surrender the survey data or face the full weight of interstellar law. But Elara knew better. The council's law was just a veneer for their monopoly on rare elements. She glanced at the co-pilot's seat where Jax, her wiry engineer, fiddled with a jury-rigged panel. His tools clattered softly, a rhythmic counterpoint to the alarms. "Any luck with the cloaker?" she asked, keeping her tone even. Panic wouldn't serve them now. Jax wiped grease from his chin with the back of his hand, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "Almost. The power draw spiking. Council tech must have jammed the relays. Give me 2 minutes and we'll ghost like a neutrino." 2 minutes. Elara's mind raced through contingencies. The asteroid's caves could hide them, but not forever. The council's scanners pierced stone like paper. And the data, proof that humans had mapped untapped iridium deposits without their oversight, burned in the shuttle's core. It wasn't just about resources, it was about humanity's right to stand equal, not beg for scraps from the galactic table. A sharp alert blared. 1 interceptor broke formation, accelerating toward their position. "They're hailing," Liam said, his face paling as he patched it through. The comm crackled and a voice slithered out, high-pitched, laced with condescension. "Human vessel, this is Enforcer Kree of the Resource Accord. Power down and prepare for boarding. Your unauthorized mining constitutes a breach of Council Edict 47B. Elara leaned forward, her jaw set. She thumbed the response button. "Enforcer Kree, we're on a routine survey. No mining here. Stand down." Laughter echoed back, brittle and mocking. "Routine? Your species' surveys always lead to theft. Comply or we vaporize your little tin can." Jax cursed under his breath, slamming a fist against the panel. Sparks flew, and the cloaker hummed to life, its field shimmering across the hull like heat haze. "Got it? We're invisible for now." Elara nodded, banking the shuttle hard into a crevasse. The asteroid's gravity tugged unevenly, stones rattling in the hold. "Liam, plot us a path through the fissures. We need to lose them in the maze." As they dove into the shadows, the scanners lit up with false echoes, decoys Jax had programmed from the shuttle's waste recyclers, cheap but clever. The lead interceptor veered off, chasing a phantom signal, while the others circled warily. Elara's pulse thrummed in her ears. This wasn't just evasion, it was defiance, a quiet assertion that humans wouldn't yield their ingenuity to feathered overlords. Deeper in, the cave walls narrowed, forcing the shuttle to weave through needle-thin gaps. A low groan echoed, stress fractures in the rock, protesting the intrusion. Liam's hands trembled on the controls. "If we hit a dead end..." "We adapt," Elara said firmly, her eyes fixed on the flickering NAV map. She remembered the briefings back on the colony ship. The Council's pride blinded them to human grit, to the way we turned scrap into salvation during the Exodus Wars. This was no different. Suddenly, the rear sensor screamed. The lead interceptor had broken through the decoy net, its weapons hot. A plasma bolt lanced past, superheating the air and scoring the cave wall ahead. Rocks sloughed off in glowing chunks, partially blocking their path. "Brace!" Elara yelled, yanking the yoke. The shuttle shuddered, scraping hull against stone, but they squeezed through. Jax hooped, patching emergency seals on the fly. That was too close. Their targeting's adaptive, learning our patterns. Then we changed them. Elara's mind clicked like a well-oiled lock. "Liam, vent the auxiliary thrusters. Make it look like we're venting atmosphere crippled. Buy us time to circle back." He hesitated, then nodded, executing the maneuver. The shuttle belched simulated debris, fooling the pursuers into a cautious approach. In the respite, Elara keyed a tight beam to the hidden relay buoy they'd planted weeks ago. The data packet zipped out, iridium coordinates, human claims, a message woven in. "We speak softly but our actions roar." The interceptor loomed closer, boarding clamps extending like claws. But as it latched on, the cave trembled, a microquake triggered by the plasma's residual heat. Fissures spiderwebbed across the ceiling, and tons of rubble cascaded down. Elara floored the engines, snapping free just as the rockfall buried the enemy ship. Alarms wailed from the wreckage, faint and fading. The other interceptors peeled away, outmatched by the asteroid's wrath. In the sudden quiet, Jax slumped back, grinning through exhaustion. "Clever, Cap, real clever." Elara exhaled, steering toward open space. The victory tasted bittersweet. One ship down, Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they skimmed the asteroid belt's edge. The view screen flickered with sensor data, painting a chaotic mosaic of tumbling rocks and faint energy signatures from the Council's hidden outpost. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren leaned forward, his fingers dancing over a holographic display, tracing the faint outlines of what might be defensive turrets. "They're cloaked, but not perfectly," Kai muttered, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. He was the cautious one, always double-checking readings, but now his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried them through the blockade. "If we thread the needle here, we can slip in without tripping their outer net." Elara nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless, it meant trusting the team. In the co-pilot's seat, Sergeant Mira Locke cracked her knuckles, her witty grin masking the tension. "Thread the needle? More like dodge a hailstorm. Just say the word, Cap, and I'll make this bird dance." The plan had been simple back on the outpost. Infiltrate the Council's secondary base, extract the data core proving their embezzlement of colony resources, and broadcast it galaxy-wide. But nothing stayed simple. Their initial probe had backfired, alerting a patrol that chased them into this belt. Now, with fuel reserves dipping low and the Council's pride, those sleek, predatory ships, closing in, the stakes clawed higher. A proximity alarm blared, sharp and insistent. Elara's hand shot to the controls. "Incoming." "Mira, evasive pattern Delta." The shuttle lurched, engines roaring as Mira banked hard left. Rocks the size of shuttles whipped past, one grazing the hull with a metallic screech. Kai braced against the console, recalibrating shields on the fly. Shields at 60%. That was too close. Elara's mind raced, plotting their vector. The Council's ships were faster in open space, but here in the belt's gravitational tangle, human grit could turn the tables. "Kai, isolate the outpost's frequency. If we can't sneak in, we bluff our way." He blinked, then grinned faintly. "Bluff? With what? Our charming personalities. With truth they won't expect." Elara keyed the comms, her voice calm as the shuttle shuddered through another dodge. "This is Captain Voss of the United Terran Alliance. We're not here for a fight. Stand down and let's talk about the ledgers you've been hiding." Static crackled, then a voice slithered through, synthetic, laced with the Council's haughty inflection. "Human vermin. Your incursion ends here. Surrender the vessel." Mira snorted, yanking the yoke to avoid a spinning boulder. "Vermin? That's rich coming from squid-faced bureaucrats." Not helping, Kai shot back, but his fingers flew faster, hacking into the patrol's weak encryption. A data stream flickered to life, proof, fragmented but damning, of diverted aid shipments meant for frontier worlds. The view screen lit up with targeting locks. Ilara's heart pounded, but she kept her tone even. You think silencing us protects your pride? We've got eyes on your accounts. Billions in credits siphoned while colonies starve. Broadcast that and your council shattered. A pause heavy as the void. The pursuing ships hesitated, their formation fracturing just enough. Mira seized it, threading through a narrow gap where asteroids clashed in slow, grinding ballet. Sparks flew from the hull, but they broke free, the outpost silhouette emerging from the shadows. A spired fortress clinging to a massive rock. They're peeling off one ship to intercept, Kai warned, his caution flaring into urgency. We punch through or we die trying. Ilara locked eyes with her team. No speeches, just the nod that said it all. Mira gunned the engines, the shuttle surging forward like an arrow loosed in the dark. Alarms wailed as fire lanced from the outpost turrets, but Kai's countermeasures flared, buying seconds. They slammed into the docking bay, mag clamps engaging with a bone-jarring thud. Smoke curled from the vents as the ramp hissed open. Ilara stood first, pulse rifle in hand. Data cores in the central vault. We get in, grab it, get out. Mira, cover our six. Kai, you're on overrides. Mira shouldered her weapon, her grin fierce. Aya, Capitul. Let's show these prides what humans do best, adapt. The corridor beyond was a labyrinth of glowing panels and humming conduits, the air thick with the scent of ozone. Footsteps echoed, council guards closing in. Ilara led the charge, her breath steady, the weight of the galaxy's forgotten worlds pressing on her shoulders. One wrong turn and the bluff became their epitaph. But as blaster fire cracked the silence, she pushed forward, the team's resolve a shield stronger than any tech. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as they hurtled toward the fractured hull of the derelict station. The view screen flickered with static, revealing jagged tears in the alien structure where the Council's vaunted defenses had failed spectacularly. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren leaned forward, his fingers dancing over a holographic display, tracing the faint energy signatures that might lead them to the artifact, or whatever remained of it after the breach. We've got incoming debris, Lieutenant Mira Thorne announced from the pilot's seat, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The shuttle banked sharply, evading a spinning chunk of iridescent metal that could have punched through their shields like paper. They'd come this far on a whisper of intelligence. The Council's pride, their so-called unbreakable archive, shattered by a human-engineered virus that exploited a flaw no one else had seen. Now, with the galaxy watching, they had to salvage proof before the fallout buried it all. Kai glanced at her, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. The readings are stabilizing. That core chamber, it's intact, but the atmosphere's venting. We'll need suits. He wasn't one for dramatics, but the caution in his tone carried the weight of what they'd lose if they failed. Humanity's fragile standing in the Council, teetering on the edge of expulsion or worse. Ilara unstrapped, pulling on her helmet with practiced efficiency. Mira, plot us a docking vector. Close as you can get without turning us into scrap. The shuttle shuddered as another piece of wreckage glanced off the hull, alarms blaring briefly before silencing. Myra's hands flew across the controls, her witty edge dulled by focus. Aye, Captain. Holding her steady. Just don't ask me to parallel park this beast. They cycled through the airlock into the station's dim corridors, emergency lights pulsing like dying stars. Ilara's boots crunched over shattered panels, the air recyclers hissing faintly against the vacuum's pull. Kai led the way, scanner in hand, its beam cutting through floating dust motes. This way. The virus propagated through their quantum links, elegant, really, took down their whole network without a shot fired. Mira snorted softly over the comms, sweeping her rifle's light ahead. Elegant? Tell that to the diplomats screaming about barbaric ingenuity. We're the bad guys now. Her caution showed in the way she checked corners, always a step behind Ilara, covering flanks without being told. The core chamber loomed at the corridor's end, its doors warped but ajar. Inside the artifact, A crystalline obelisk humming with residual power, floated in a stasis field, miraculously untouched. Elara approached, her gloved hand hovering near the interface panel. Kai, can we extract it without triggering the failsafes? He knelt, interfacing his portable rig. Lines of code scrolled across his visor. Working on it. Their security's adaptive, learning from the breach even now. A spark jumped from the panel, and the obelisk flickered, shadows dancing across the walls like accusatory fingers. Elara's heart rate spiked. One wrong move and the whole chamber could collapse, sealing their fate with the station. Mira positioned herself at the door, rifle trained on the widening gap. Captain, we've got movement. Not debris, something's alive in here. Her voice held no fear, just the grit of someone who'd faced worse in the void. Elara spun, drawing her sidearm. Through the haze, shapes stirred, automated drones, Council's remnants, whirring to life with vengeful precision. Back us up, Elara ordered, firing a suppressing burst that scattered the first wave. Kai cursed under his breath, his fingers blurring, almost rerouting the power flow. Hold them off. The drones swarmed, lasers slicing the air. Mira dropped to one knee, picking them off with calculated shots, her breaths even. 3 down. More coming. This is what happens when you poke the bear, or in this case the human. Elara covered Kai, her shots economical, each one a testament to the training that had kept her crew alive through a dozen crises. A drone clipped her shoulder, heat searing through the suit, but she pressed on, grit overriding pain. The obelisk stabilized, its hum deepening as Kai yanked the core free, cradling it like a fragile egg. Got it, he yelled, and they retreated, drones harrying their heels. The shuttle's airlock sealed just as the chamber buckled, a low groan echoing through the comms. Mira punched the throttle, pulling them clear as the station fragmented behind them, pieces glinting in the starlight. Back in the cockpit, Elara peeled off her helmet, wincing at the burn. The obelisk sat secured, its secrets intact, proof of humanity's quiet strength, the soft word that carried the weight of worlds. But as the shuttle streaked toward home, she knew the cost. The Council's wrath, alliances frayed, and a galaxy forever changed. Kai met her gaze, a faint smile breaking through. We spoke softly. Now they listen. Mira chuckled, wiping her brow. And if they don't? We carry the big stick. The stars blurred past, carrying them into uncertain triumph. The dim glow of the Council chamber's holographic displays flickered like dying stars as Captain Elena Reyes leaned forward, her fingers tracing the edges of the alien interface. Sweat beaded on her brow, not from fear, but from the raw exertion of bridging human intuition with the Krell's rigid logic matrices. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Hale muttered under his breath, his wiry frame hunched over a makeshift translator jury-rigged from salvaged parts. This isn't just code, he said, voice low and edged with that familiar grit. It's their entire worldview, unyielding like trying to bend neutronium. Across the chamber, the Krell delegates shifted uneasily on their crystalline perches, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the chaos unfolding on the central holoscreen. The rift, the massive spatial anomaly they dismissed as a human exaggeration, now pulsed with erratic energy, swallowing probe after probe. Ambassador Vexlar, the Council's stern enforcer with his iridescent scales rippling in agitation, slammed a talon against his console. Your species' meddling has accelerated the collapse. The core worlds are at risk, billions of lives. Elena didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than accusatory aliens during her deep space runs. Solar flares that turned hulls to slag, crewmates lost to the void. Here, though, the stakes twisted deeper, laced with the weight of first contact. Humanity wasn't begging for a seat at the table anymore, they were rewriting the menu. Meddling? She replied, her tone steady, laced with that quiet steel that had kept her team alive through a dozen crises. We're fixing what your pride ignored. Marcus' status. The doctor wiped his glasses on his sleeve, eyes narrowing at the scrolling data. The rift's feedback loop is stabilizing, barely. If we invert the quantum dampeners like I theorized, it could seal, but it'll take precise timing. One slip and it backlashes through the whole system. He glanced up, meeting her gaze. The unspoken hung between them, Failure meant not just the Council's worlds but Earth's fledgling colony ships, adrift in the crossfire. Lieutenant Kira Voss, ever the cautious one, paced the perimeter, her hand resting on the sidearm that felt woefully inadequate against the chamber's automated defenses. Her sharp eyes darted to the guards, hulking sentinels with energy lances humming faintly. "Captain, they're tensing. If this doesn't work, they won't wait for explanations." Kira's voice carried the weight of protocol, but beneath it simmered the loyalty that had bound them since the academy. She'd argued against this gambit earlier, predicting backlash, but now she stood ready, adapting as always. Elena nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The plan had backfired once already. Their initial probe had triggered a surge, nearly vaporizing the away team. But humans didn't fold, they pivoted. "Vexlar, your archives mentioned a harmonic resonance in the rift's structure. We can use it. Let us interface directly or watch it consume everything." The ambassador hesitated, his delegation murmuring in their clicking tongue. Pride warred with desperation. The Krell, ancient stewards of the galaxy, reduced to debating with these upstart primates. Finally, he inclined his head, a gesture stiff with reluctance. "Proceed. But if you fail, humanity's envoy status ends here." Marcus's fingers flew across the controls, syncing the human algorithm with the alien net. The chamber hummed, vibrations crawling up their spines. Elena felt the pull like gravity shifting underfoot. Images flashed, the rift's maw, a swirling vortex of fractured spacetime, edges fraying like torn fabric. One image burned clearest, a derelict Krell station half engulfed, broadcasting faint distress signals from cycles past. "Resonance building," Marcus announced, his voice tight. 10 seconds to inversion. Kira positioned herself at the secondary panel, her cautious nature channeling into focused precision. "I've got the stabilizers. Say the word." The holoscreen warped, the anomaly contracting then, expanding in violent throbs. Alarms wailed, sharp and insistent, cutting through the tension like knives. Vexlar's eyes widened, facets gleaming with alarm. "It's worsening. Abort." "No," Elena snapped, her hand clamping on Marcus's shoulder, "a anchor in the storm. Trust the math. 3-2. The rift shuddered, a low groan echoing through the chamber as if the fabric of reality itself protested. Then, with a soundless implosion, the edges knit together, the vortex collapsing inward. Silence fell, broken only by the soft whir of cooling systems. Marcus exhaled, slumping back. "Still. Containment at 98%. Elena straightened, meeting Vexlar's gaze. The ambassador's scales dulled, his posture sagging. Around them, the delegation exchanged glances, shock mingling with dawning respect. The cost lingered in the air. The rift's scar would demand years of monitoring, and Earth's reputation, once a footnote, now etched indelibly. But as the chamber lights steadied, Elena allowed a small smile. Humanity had spoken softly, indeed, and the galaxy had listened. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of holographic displays flickering back to life, casting ethereal blue glows across the faces of the assembled counselors. Ilara Voss stood at the center podium, her hand steady despite the ache in her shoulders from hours of unyielding negotiation. Beside her, Jax leaned against the rail, his wiry frame taut like a coiled spring, while Mira scanned the readouts on her wrist pad, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The alien delegates, towering Krell with their iridescent scales, the diminutive Solari buzzing in clusters, shifted uneasily in their seats, the air thick with the scent of ionized metal and unspoken defeat. "You've seen the simulations," Ilara said, her voice calm, carrying the weight of quiet certainty. She gestured to the central holoscreen, where the projected trajectories of the rogue asteroid belt twisted like serpents in the void. "Our proposal integrates your shield arrays with our propulsion tech. It's not dominance, it's survival. For all of us." A Krell elder, his crest flaring in agitation, rumbled from his perch. "Humanity presumes too much. Your ingenuity disrupted our fleet's harmony. We demanded reparations, not this patchwork alliance." Jax snorted softly, but Ilara shot him a glance that silenced him. She stepped forward, the soft click of her boots echoing in the vast hall. "Disruption? We saved your vanguard from that plasma storm. Your pride cost you 3 cruisers. Our caution saved the rest. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The data spoke for her. The schematics of the hybrid drive, pieced together from scavenged parts and human grit pulsing with efficient light. Mira chimed in, her tone clipped and precise. Efficiency ratings are up 47%. Run the numbers again if you doubt it. She tapped her pad, sending fresh projections arcing through the air. The Solari delegates leaned in, their compound eyes whirring as they processed the flows. One emitted a series of clicks that translated to reluctant approval. The elder's crest dimmed slightly, a sign Alara had learned meant yielding ground. But tension lingered. The council's vote hung by threads of protocol and ego. Outside, through the viewport, the asteroid field loomed, a graveyard of shattered rocks, remnants of the catastrophe that had drawn them all here. Humanity's ship, the battered Endurance, orbited silently, its hull scarred from the very ingenuity that had turned the tide. Jax pushed off the rail, his voice low but edged with that irreverent spark. Look, we've all lost something out here. My arm's still tingling from the EMP feedback. He flexed his prosthetic, a makeshift marvel of salvaged alien alloys and human wiring glinting under the lights. But fighting over scraps? That's how we end up as debris. Let's build instead. The chamber fell quiet, save for the hum of the holos. Ilara watched the elder's gaze drift to the viewport, where a faint trail of debris caught the starlight, a lingering reminder of the cost. Their early plan, a bold intercept maneuver, had backfired spectacularly, scattering the belt and nearly dooming the fleet. But in the chaos, humanity's adaptability had shown, rerouting power through unorthodox circuits, forging links with wary allies mid-crisis. Finally, the elder inclined his head, scales rippling like waves on a still pond. The council concedes. Integration proceeds under joint command. Murmurs rippled through the ranks, a mix of relief and resentment. Votes tallied in glowing script, sealing the pact. As the session adjourned, Ilara felt the weight lift, but not entirely. Jax clapped her on the back, Mira already plotting logistics. Yet in the corridor beyond, whispers followed them, fractured alliances, grudging respect. The Endurance awaited, its engines primed for the long haul home. Humanity had spoken softly, but the galaxy had heard the unspoken thunder. And in the shadows of the belt, new threats stirred, waiting for the next test of will.